Have you ever talked to your phone and been like, whoa, it actually got that right? AI is getting so good, especially voice recognition. And today we're diving deep into a company that's right at the forefront of all that Deepgram.
It really is incredible to see how far it's come, right?
Hmm.
Like voice is becoming the main way we interact with technology.
For sure. And from what I've read about Deepgram, they're really tackling some big challenges, like how can businesses make sense of all the audio data they have?
Yeah, there's a ton of data out there, like you said. And Deepgram's whole thing is they use deep learning to make audio transcription and analysis way faster and more accurate.
Deep learning. Okay, so for anyone who's not totally up on that, what exactly does that mean?
So basically, it's like training a computer to understand language, but not by like programming in all these rules. It's more like letting it absorb tons and tons of audio data and learn from that.
So it's like training a super ear for businesses then.
Exactly. And the more data it processes, the smarter it gets. So it's a win-win.
That's got to be huge for companies that deal with a ton of audio, right?
Absolutely. Think about all the customer service calls meetings. All that info that's just sitting there. Deepgram can help businesses actually use that data to improve things.
So it's not just about getting the words down, it's about finding those hidden insights.
Exactly. And that's what makes Deepgram stand out. It's not just transcribing. It's about helping businesses make better decisions.
That's really interesting. So they've got this powerful tech. What else makes them unique in such a competitive field?
Well, instead of trying to be everything to everyone, they took a really targeted approach. They focused on becoming the experts in a few key industries.
Oh, interesting.
So like they do a lot with customer service calls, analyzing them to help companies improve their service. And they're also big in healthcare, providing super accurate medical transcriptions.
Okay, so they found their niche and became the best at it. Makes sense. But I'm sure it wasn't all smooth sailing, right? What were some of the hurdles they faced along the way?
Well, one thing the article mentions is that even with this amazing tech, there are still some limitations, like really noisy audio or strong accents can be tricky.
Right. Because human language is messy.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
But the important thing is that Deepgram was really upfront about those limitations, and they're constantly working to improve.
That's huge, transparency and continuous improvement, even when you're already doing well. So what other challenges popped up as they grew?
Competition, of course.
Yeah.
They're up against some giants like Google and Amazon.
Oh, yeah, it's a whole other level.
Oh, but instead of trying to fight them head on, Deepgram doubled down on what they were good at. They were like, we're the best at this specific thing, and that's how they thrived. It's like they looked around and said, okay, these big guys, they can do their thing. We're going to be the absolute best at this right here.
Yeah. Focus on your strengths, right? But that actually brings up another question I had about their growth. The article mentioned something about Deepgram hitting a point where they needed to scale up, but without letting quality slip. How'd they pull that off?
Oh, yeah, that's a tough one. Something a lot of startups struggle with, honestly. You know, you find success, things going great, but then you realize, whoops, our system wasn't built to handle this much.
Yeah, you can't just expect to keep growing at that pace without some bumps in the road.
Exactly. And for Deepgram, they realized pretty early on that they needed to be proactive about scaling their infrastructure. They couldn't just wait until things started breaking.
So they were already thinking about the future, even while they were still in those early stages of growth.
Right. It's like they were building the plane while they were flying it.
That's impressive. But it wasn't just about having the right tech in place, right? They also made strategic partnerships a big part of their strategy.
Absolutely. They understood that they couldn't do everything themselves, and that sometimes the smartest move is to find amazing partners who can help you reach new heights.
So they focused on what they excelled at and then teamed up with others who could fill in the gaps.
Really smart. And speaking of what they excel at, I wanted to circle back to something you touched on earlier about Deepgram's work in customer service and healthcare. Those struck me as really powerful applications of their tech. They are. It's one thing to talk about AI and deep learning in the abstract, but when you see how it's actually being used to make a real difference in people's lives, it's pretty amazing.
Totally. So let's zoom in on those areas a bit. Starting with customer service, what exactly is Deepgram doing there?
So they're using their tech to analyze customer service calls like on a massive scale. So instead of having a human listen to every single call and try to pick out patterns, Deepgram can do that automatically.
Wow. So it's like having a team of superpowered listeners who can pick up on nuances that a human might miss.
Exactly. And that gives businesses incredible insights into what their customers are actually experiencing, what's working and what's not.
And that can lead to some pretty significant improvements, I'd imagine.
Oh, absolutely. Happier customers, smoother operations, the benefits are huge.
Okay, so customer service, that makes sense.
Yeah.
What about healthcare? How does Deepgram fit into that world?
So one of the big things they're doing there is medical transcription. And accuracy is obviously crucial in healthcare, right? So Deepgram's tech can create these incredibly precise transcripts of doctor's notes, consultations, all that, which frees up healthcare professionals to spend more time actually caring for patients.
That's huge. It's like they're taking care of the administrative burden, so doctors and nurses can focus on what really matters. Precisely. And it's not just about efficiency either. It's about reducing errors and improving patient safety, which is obviously paramount in healthcare.
For sure. So we've talked a lot about Deepgram's successes, and it sounds like they've really got a lot going for them. But it's also important to acknowledge that no company is perfect, right? There must have been challenges and maybe even some missteps along the way. What can we learn from those?
Oh, absolutely. No one's perfect, right? And the article does point out that as good as their tech is, it's not invincible, like a super noisy backgrounds or really strong accents. Those can still trip it up sometimes.
Yeah, it's a good reality check, right? Like as smart as AI is getting, human language is still pretty darn complex.
Right.
Totally. And for Deepgram's part, they've been really good about acknowledging those limitations instead of trying to sweep them under the rug.
Mm.
And they're always working on making their system more robust, always learning.
That's awesome to hear. That kind of transparency and commitment to improvement is so key for any company, really. But let's zoom out a bit. I'm curious to hear your take on the bigger picture here. Where do you see voice tech going in the future, and what kind of role do you think companies like Deepgram will play in shaping that future?
It's going to be huge, right? I mean, we're already seeing it everywhere. Voice assistants are like part of the furniture now. But honestly, I think that's just the beginning. As this tech gets even more sophisticated, we're talking revolutionizing entire industries. Imagine doctors being able to dictate notes directly into a patient's chart and have it be 100% accurate, or being able to have real-time translations that actually work seamlessly. Those language barriers just disappear.
That's wild to think about, being able to communicate with anyone anywhere without a second thought. It's like we're on the verge of being able to talk to tech the same way we talk to each other, just naturally and intuitively.
Exactly. And that opens up so many possibilities for businesses, for education, for just everyday life. It's pretty exciting.
It really is. But of course, with all this amazing potential comes some big questions too, right? Like, what about privacy? How do we make sure this technology is used ethically? And what about the potential impact on jobs if AI starts automating even more tasks?
Yeah, those are definitely conversations we need to be having as this technology evolves. It's not just about what we can do, but what we should do. We need to make sure we're developing and using it responsibly.
It's a shared responsibility for sure. Tech companies, policymakers, all of us, really. But on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive into Deepgram and the exciting world of voice recognition.
Yeah, it's been a fascinating conversation.
Definitely. And for our listeners, we hope you've enjoyed this journey with us as much as we have. Remember, keep exploring, keep asking those big questions, and we'll catch you in the next episode.